Alright, so we're working on the Courier some more today. Plan is to try and get the motor in, maybe get the motor mounts mocked up or even finished, see how far we make it on that. It's still sitting in the back of the truck here. It's the old one. It's a new engine with newer transmission. We got to get those bolted together, and then the Mega Squirt does not have ability to control the throttle body, so I have a mechanical one here to see if we can't get that one. This is off a Ranger with the 2.3 liter 4-cylinder in it, which is really similar to the 2.5. I'm gonna see if we can't get this bolted on there. Got an extra intake manifold piece. I'm hoping I can cut that, maybe make an adapter if needed. So see if we can't get a handle on what's gonna have to happen with that. But my plan is to try and use the original motor mounts. This is one of them, and it's dark, but it just kind of goes in there like so with the 3 bolts. That give me a pretty good spot to try and mount the rest of the engine off of. So I'm just gonna see if I can't do something with that and save me a little bit of money, because going with other ones, I mean, you gotta buy them. So just gonna go ahead and get everything unpacked here and see if we can't see how much work we can get done on it today. Alright, so it started to rain, and so I had to hurry up real quick and pull the transmission out of the back so I could pull the truck in a little further and keep it dry. It's not too heavy, mainly just pick it up by hand. Just gonna go ahead and try and bolt it up to the engine. I have the engine hanging low, so it should just slide right up. May need a little bit of adjustment up and down, but we'll worry about that when the time comes. Got a couple of bolts I found that thread into the motor. I'm gonna have to get a whole set when I'm finally bolting it in, but I don't have a clutch yet, so it's gonna have to come back apart anyway. So I'm just gonna go ahead and get started on that, and hopefully everything goes smoothly. I expect it to bolt right up, but not 100% certain until it actually happens. Got the transmission secured. I got like 4 bolts in there kind of holding it together. I'm gonna go get a whole set of ones that should actually get the job done, and I can fill all the bolt holes obviously before we get it fully installed. This intake didn't come with the throttle body. The one the Fusions came with, that this engine came out of, is computer controlled, and the only thing the Mega Squirt 3 that I ordered won't do is throttle body control, because legal issues. They don't want to control your throttle with their coding, yada yada. And I mean, I don't want to have to program throttle, because I don't know if I'm going to do it right anyway. So I got this throttle body off of an old Ranger with the 2.3 liter in it. Electronic idle control, and then mechanical throttle. You can see the throttle. So the bolt holes on here look like they'll bolt up in place of this intake. I was hoping the throttle body itself would just transfer over, but it doesn't. So I'm going to take the whole intake off, which is actually a little bigger, and then replace it with this one, and hopefully all goes well. And I want to get that done before I do the motor mounts, because it's going to affect the amount of space that I have. I'm hoping it adds to it, but just looking at it, the throttle body is going to point down, so I think it's just going to limit my space even more. It's probably going to hang down kind of low, but we'll see. So, just take it one step at a time. Okay, so I got the intake off, and it's not the same. Alright, so we're in. This was from pulling the motor, but I needed that extra clearance to go in with it. It was close. I put this piece of wood in there, and you can see some wood shavings, and I used it to help guide it. Again, those bends are from removing the old one, but I needed that clearance on the way in anyway. So use that so I could just slide it down there without damaging anything. And I don't know if you could tell, but I was kind of pushing the motor up on it to wedge it, and I was giving me extra angle, and then I'd drop it down and it'd kind of slide in, then I'd wedge it up and slide it in. And I mean, there's a point where it was like you could maybe fit a hair right there. So right off the bat, oil filter kind of looks like it's going to be in the way. I'm not going to worry about it a whole lot yet, because I'm probably just going to take it off, and hopefully it ends up behind that support plate there. But it looks like it's going to try and occupy the same place. And let me hit the fan. Okay, and then over here, the exhaust manifold and the battery tray are about to get into a little bit of a fight. So I'm going to take the exhaust manifold off. I've already kind of played with the idea of putting the battery in the back, so if I have to remove the battery tray, it just is what it is. But I'm just gonna remove the exhaust manifold and worry about it later, because the engine needs to be bolted in first. So not a whole lot of space back here. A little bit of space up here. I'm thinking I'm gonna get the support under the transmission, so that way I can lower it down, rehook the chain up so I can rotate the motor, have it a little more level, and see closer to where we're actually going to be sitting. But I'm going to do that after I get the exhaust manifold off here. So rusty bolts. That one's not so bad actually, but you can kind of peek under the heat shield, and those are rusty also, so we'll see how it goes. And I think I'm going to remove these just so I don't put an eye out while we're installing it. But that's where the alternator goes, so it's going to have to go back on eventually. But we'll check back in here if I have any broken bolts, or once we start lowering her down a little bit further. Okay, so we got the motor dropped in, resting in the truck. I had to use a ratchet strap to get the rotation that I wanted. It's a little bit on the tall side. It looks like the back part of it's going to clear, but we're definitely going to have issues from like here forwards. More than I was expecting, but that's how it goes. Besides that, I mean, it fits pretty well. Plenty of room for the exhaust over here. After I get a mount in there, I might be able to figure something out with the factory manifold, which would be nice. So you can see right down here, those are the holes for the factory engine mount. Those are the ones that are on the engine. So that's going to line up pretty nicely. Actually, let me grab the actual mount here. So this is the stock Courier mount, and it basically bolts up like so. You can see the hole down there. And so I basically just got to get that connected onto there, which shouldn't be too difficult. Now that I'm looking at it, it'd also be pretty easy to make my own mount off of something like that, but we'll see which route we end up going. The other side is the one that's going to give us more of a fight. So there's no room. If you see that green tape down there, that's where the oil filter goes. I did take the adapter off, and the mounting plate's right in the way. So I have no idea what I'm going to do about that. I'm going to look at my other options for oil filter adapters on this engine and see what I can come up with. Maybe I can find a remote option that's super low profile and move the filter somewhere else, and then I can just slide the engine over to the passenger side more and run with it like that. But I mean, if you don't factor in the oil filter, those are the bolt holes for the factory mount, bolt holes for for the Ford mount or the new engine's mount. So those line up close enough to where it's not going to be too difficult to get something figured out also. Intake manifold's probably going to have to go because the throttle body, that's just not enough space. This is the factory throttle linkage, so I can get rid of that, but that's still not enough room to run a throttle body on there. The aluminum tape covers up the factory shifter setup, and it lines up with the hole in the cab, which is nice. I'm not going to have to move it. And then I got a pry bar wedged in there to help with the rotation I needed. But that stud right there, and then the stud right there are the factory transmission crossmember, and they line up pretty nice with the factory transmission or the Mazda engine mount studs, so that shouldn't be too difficult to get something rigged up. Well, it looks like the hardest part's just going to be figuring out the oil filter and the throttle body. And part that I'm least excited about, which I'm probably going to do here this afternoon, is right down there, the engine's actually hitting the cross member. So if I want to cut, I don't want to cut anything actually, but I'm going to have to, and it looks like if I cut here and just channel it, I'll be able to drop the motor down another, what's that, 1.5 inches, 2 inches. I got skinny fingers, and hopefully that'll give us the clearance we need in the front, because that'll help me just get the rotation down, because it's wedged on there and I can't raise the transmission any, so it's kind of teetering, and so the front's up like that. So if I can get the middle part down, it'll bring the whole engine down. Only other issue I ran into is the sway bar hit the oil pan, so I just unbolted it, probably come up with a bracket to drop it down here like 1 inch or so, and figure out how much space I need once the engine's all mounted, but that's going to be an afterthought. But I mean, even just, again, 1.5 inches, 2 inches in there will be plenty. Be plenty of clearance. So that'll be easy to do. I won't have to change the sway bar or anything. And I'm looking at how the truck sits, at least in the front. It looks like the new engine weighs less, so it's probably going to ride a little bit stiffer, which will be nice, because it was super soft to begin with in the front only, and the rear was stiff as like it was basically like a race car. So I'm gonna go get some lunch because I'm tired and hungry, and then I'm gonna pull the engine back out, or I'm gonna mark this cross member, and then I'm gonna pull the engine back out and get to cutting, which I'm not excited about, but it's gonna get done. All right, so I got the engine back out. Got my marks made very poorly. Well, you can kind of see a line right there. The camera's not picking it up too well. I got another one right there. And hope that reinforces it enough. So the crossmember is 2 pieces. Well, you can kind of see the seam right there. And then there's another one on the bottom. So I'm not going to be going all the way. Through. So I shouldn't. Probably should, but I'm not going to reinforce it because I think that bottom part will do enough for me, especially since there's no engine up here. It's a lot less weight. And just kind of cross our fingers, hope for the best. It'll help us get the engine down a little bit. And then I think out of all my options for this, I was just poking around online a little bit, and the Miata intake manifold is basically like this, but the throttle body inlet outlet is on that side, basically just flipped. So that's going to be my best bet to make this fit. And then for the exhaust, the Miata exhaust has a cat on it, and I'm not going to spend money on that, so probably just get the one on here to fit. Maybe if I have to move the battery cover or whatnot. And EGR valve here is just going to go, so not going to worry about that, because the Miata intake manifold has a different EGR setup. I'm not going to spend time transferring it over. I'm just going to delete it, and should be all set. So I'm going to go ahead and get to cutting here, and then that's, after we're done with that, probably going to be done for the day. And test fit coming next time around, when have the intake manifold and everything else, so we can start on the motor mounts. And I'll figure something out about the oil filter in the process. So I got it out, got it well cut. I'm gonna have to do some trimming to get it to fit the way that I'd like, but basically that's it. I'm gonna weld it in place, and then I'm gonna call it a day after that. Alright, so ultimately this is what we ended up with. I decided against flipping it and just trimmed all the height out of it that I could. And you can see that I trimmed that flat too, just because it just wasn't lining up right when I flipped it. And then like this, and I had it lined up real nice a minute ago, but like that. And then I don't know, I should probably box that in there and that in there, but we'll see how motivated I am. So ground that flat down here, as you can tell, same with up there. Okay, so here we are back at the house. Still waiting on a piece for the intake manifold, so I'm gonna go ahead and hold off replacing it with the Miata one. This is still the Fusion manifold. when you kind of like hold them up and just like look at it, it's about the same footprint, except the throttle body comes out flat right here. So I'll actually have a little bit more clearance right back here. So that's about all that's changed here. I'm just gonna go ahead and drop it back in for the test fit, and hoping everything lines up, I'm just gonna weld this piece of the cross member back in, and hopefully be able to move on to the motor mounts. I don't think I'll have time to start them today, but we'll see how it goes. Alright, so we got a test fit again. We have a lot more clearance, and shifter's pretty close to lined up. It's not perfect, but it'll do for now. Just kind of proof of concept at this point. I think I'm still gonna have to get a truck, an oil pan off of a truck or a Miata, because when you get down right next to it, I don't know if I'm gonna be able to. Yeah, the valve cover sticks up just a teeny bit. And I don't think that's gonna cut it. So, but you know, I mean, the hood is slanted, so I guess the thing to do right now would be try to put the hood on and see if it fits. But it's sitting on the cross member, and I'm gonna have to pick it up at least a 1/4 inch off of it, or maybe a little bit less. But you know, it can't be sitting on it as you're going down the road. So let's see if we can't get a good view of what's going on with the oil pan. It's pretty hard to see, but you can see right there that corner. Right back here, it's just barely touching. So it is what it is. I don't know. Maybe I'll see if I can't cut another like 1/4 inch out of the cross member or something. But it's already about as low as it's gonna go. But yeah, so I think that's the cross member. I think is going to get the job done, and anything else I can probably get away with the oil pan or whatnot. So I'm going to go ahead and get to welding that in and get back with y'all. Well, first of all, we obviously got to get the motor back out, but we'll get back with you here in a minute. Alright, so got it welded in. It's not pretty, but it's going to get the job done. So I'm gonna come in and probably box this in later. I don't think it's gonna be necessary, but just to help keep some dirt out of there. I'd like to see how much clearance I have for it first though. But this should be it. I'm still gonna look for another oil pan, try and just maximize the amount of clearance we have, because I don't think that front wheel drive one's gonna work for us. So yeah, probably that should be the next step, be the oil pan, and then I have the inner intake manifold piece on the way that I need. Basically just fills the gap up right here, and I'll be able to bolt that onto the motor and then drop it in and get some motor mounts made up. Should be all set. I have an oil filter relocation kit because the housing I mentioned was in the way. Have a clutch and a flywheel kit here for it. So we should be all set. Thanks for watching, and make sure to keep an eye out for another video here. Probably going to be a couple weeks for the next step.